our guests, Professor Godfred Bokpin, Professor of Finance and an economist at the University of Ghana, and Ken Thompson, Director of Dalex Finance, thought leader, business and economic matters, as well as a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
And good morning to our
very well.
listeners. Good morning,
Yes.
Mr. Ken Thompson, my boss.
That's not possible, but I'll take it.
All right. Okay, good. Now let's try and figure this out. For me, there's only one question that's important. The Cedi is in what appears to be a free fall. Just over a month. I mean, it's lost so much value. I remember, buying dollars for about 13 Cedis just about 4 weeks ago. Now it's pushing towards 15 Cedis. That is astronomical. My question, the only one that matters, Professor Bokpin, is this going to stop?
That's interesting. It will take a rest, and then it will continue to depreciate. Is that a good answer for you?
No, but I'm assuming that's your truthful analysis.
Prof, when you say it will take a rest how and why will it continue depreciating?
There will be some relative stability, and then the depreciation will continue. That has been the pattern of the Cedi since it was introduced in July 1965. It's not, even if we did everything right, we still expect that the Cedi will depreciate by a certain margin, given the relative strength of our economy, given the other economies that we interact with. Of course, and that would only be consistent with the objective of price stability. Because in economics, when we say price stability, it's not exactly at the same price over time. Okay. And therefore, some level of volatility will still be experienced if we were to do everything right, both from the fiscal side and then from the monetary side. Unfortunately, we have not been able to support the Cedi with the necessary sound macroeconomic policy making, which would include responsible fiscal management and prudent monetary policy. So over the years, we have denied the Cedi this basic right, and then we expect the Cedi to do a magic. The Cedi's behavior is a reflection of some underlying fundamentals. You remember a couple of years ago, there was a popular saying, and it's still relevant. If the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. Put differently, if you are in doubt about the fundamentals of the economy, check the exchange rate. In other words, the fundamentals of the economy, we are talking about development that relates to the real sector of the economy. We progress that by GDP and its decomposition in terms of agriculture, industry, service. I couldn't help myself but to lean to the preliminary discussions that I heard from your studio. I think the host, including yourself, and then there were two other people. They are my very good friends, but their names have escaped me.
Winston Raymond Mamavi.
Yes. In fact, Raymond seems to be the latest economist now. So we would accord him that. Okay. And then, wonderful. So all that they talked about actually constitute part of the fundamental of the economy. And in that regard, we are talking about the real sector, agriculture, industry, service. You check whether we have been doing quite well along those lines. Ghana has comparative advantage in terms of agriculture. But we have moved beyond that. Comparative advantage is not enough. Countries that don't have comparative advantage are creating competitive advantage. And that is why Ghana, with comparative advantage over the production of tomatoes, would import tomatoes from Burkina Faso, a desert country. So having comparative advantage and not backing that with the necessary competitive advantage is a zero-sum game, if not a negative-sum game. That's so fun. Then you can also talk about a fiscal profit that by a fiscal deficit or primary balance, either on cash basis or on commitment basis. And again, we talk about the fiscal regime. That has been weak. Okay, that has been weak over the years. In fact, Kojo, in 1964, let's go back to history.
Yeah.
Ghana's inflation was less than 1%. 1964. At that time, Kojo, we didn't have a currency of our own. We were using the British West African pound. Because we didn't have monetary sovereignty and we couldn't print the currency at will, we stabilized price. Inflation was barely an issue. Then we have fiscal authority, and there was a constraint in utilizing the fiscal independence because we couldn't print currency at will. What was the drive for politicians? More and cheap money. So we introduced the Cedi in July 1965. Kojo, since then, this country has never had rest from inflation. By the end of 1965, inflation had gone up to 26.4%. The result of that was for Ghana to surrender to the IMF. Of course, that program was rejected after it had been approved. So then you want to look at other fundamentals. You can talk about the monetary side. Oh, yeah, was it that by money supply or broadly or policy rates? Could you know what we have been doing?
Tell us.
Because we have learned from our history. When we printed more currency at will, July 1965, and inflation jumped up, what did we do in 2022? Even when there was clear evidence that there was printing, the central bank still its funds to demand until the IMF came to town and shone light. By the end of 2022, the overdraft extension to Ghana government by the central bank was 77.6 billion cedis. That was more than $6 billion at Bank of Ghana's subsidiary SCP they kept. What do you expect with all of that? This is a small open economy. We are practically not producing. Then we want to let's press forward, Kojo, and see the politics we do with managing the economy. Not long ago, we were singing the song of turn around. You remember, we had turned the corner. We have turned the corner and turned everything. Then Bank of Ghana claimed victory over a cocktail. Check the data. Bank of Ghana claimed victory over a cocktail and credited the stability we have seen to gold for oil program. You remember?
Yes.
What has happened to all of that? When it was clear to the markets that the honeymoon effect of the IMF will not last for long, and therefore the country needed to be moderate with celebrating success and begin to do things on the ground that will consolidate and generate confidence in our economy. Sometimes, when you see the instability with the Cedi, it's a reflection of lack of confidence in the economy. Okay, so could you let me ask you a simple question like we ask our students on the average. If you had 1 million Ghana cedis today, right, are there viable opportunities, alternatives, investment options for you to invest in?
Hard to think of anything that is that has promising prospects in Ghana at the moment.
At the moment, okay. Given that you're a rational human being, your basic instinct will be to preserve the value of that 1 million cedis, isn't it?
True.
If you keep it in the local currency, anytime the cedi depreciates, you lose value.
Yep.
Your instinct will drive you to look for a currency that is more stable, immediately you will look for dollars. Once you are buying dollars, you are actually selling cedis. So there are people in this country, for purposes of storing value and preserving value, who prefer to keep their wealth denominated in USD, dollars, foreign currency, than the local currency. Because remember, one basic function of money is to serve as a store of value. And the more the cedi depreciates, it ceases to perform that one basic function. When it comes to preservation of wealth and making money, love for country is held constant. The essence of confidence in the cedi is not about love. It's not about motion. It's not about favor. That's what happens.
Yeah. I want to bring in Ken Thompson, if you don't mind, Prof. We'll come back to you for more. But Uncle Ken, so, I mean, how do we fix this? There are some people suggesting, for example, Dr. John Kwache, of the Institute of Economic Affairs, suggesting that we should just dollarize the whole economy and get it over with. Is that the solution?
Good morning again to listeners. Dollarization, it's not a silver bullet, but it will stop one of the major crimes being committed against the people of this country. Over the years, the Bank of Ghana showed itself incapable of managing our monetary policy. So what they do is that they've shown that they are not independent. So they connive with the government under the guise that if they don't give the government money, the economy will collapse. They give the government huge sums of money. The government stops the money, and then we are asked to pay for it through higher and higher taxation. For example, the current depreciation and the current inflation we're facing is largely a result of the Bank of Ghana providing almost around about 50 billion pumped into the economy in 2022. So at least that major crime is taken away. I mean, so an example I have is you are going to the market, you find a piece of yam, you decide that you enjoy yam, go and get a wolf money, then go and buy all the yam in the market, increase the prices, everybody suffers, and then as if that's not bad enough, you get your policemen to go and stand on the roadside and tax the people that are bringing the yam, and even increase the prices. So as a short-term measure, the Bank of Ghana showing itself incapable of managing the monetary policy, let's subcontract it. And at least one of the major crimes that's being committed against the people of this country will go away. Giving the government money when it's not backed by productivity, that is what has led us all these years to where we are now. And unless that is solved, well, we're going nowhere. It's a major crime against the poor of this country.
So for you, let's dollarize and eliminate the Bank of Ghana's ability to, devalue our cedi by giving out all of that money to government.
Yeah, well, the Bank of Ghana shown that it's incapable of doing it. They police the government and come with all sort of excuses to get the government money. It causes inflation. It causes depreciation. We are poorer. We are standstill. The money that's given is not backed by any productivity. And we are poorer every day as a result. I mean, of course, other things must happen. But at least that major crime cannot be committed again.
Mr. Thompson, is it that easy? I mean, can we just get up and say, okay, we're dollarizing and that's the end of it?
Of course, there's a process. I mean, there's a process. But at least if we go along that route, I mean, our currency will stabilize, inflation will come down, there's an incentive for people to come and invest. We know what our money is. It doesn't mean price will come down. But of course, that needs to be backed by other policies to promote private sector growth. Of course, the government will have a wolf money to talk. There's no more wolf money. There's no more wolf money. Because it's a big issue. Look at our history. All we do is deficit finance. All we do is deficit. Spend money we haven't got. And that's why we are where we are. I mean, we're not capable of doing it subcontracting. At least, if we want more money, we have to go to. We don't print dollars.
Yeah.
If we want to raise interest rates, if we want to touch it, or we can't touch it. There's no more awoof money stuff. We're going to deal with that issue. So that's a short-term measure, yes. But of course, like I said, it's not a silver bullet. It needs to be backed by a commercial education system that's not torturous. It needs to be backed with policies that incentivize people to produce. But one major crime against this country, one major crime against the people of Ghana, providing awoof money for government to chop, does not exist.
Let me get the view of Professor Godfred Bokpin on this. Prof, what's your take?
Thank you very much. That's quite complex. On one hand, I assure you with the advantages of dollarization, as my boss has said, and Dr. Godfred, whom I also respect, has also said. But I have a slightly different view. Whilst I acknowledge the advantages, to some extent, dollarization is at a different stage. There's already some level of dollarization in our country.
Prof, can I ask you to reposition yourself a bit? We're losing the quality of the signal.
Okay. Is it better now?
This seems a bit better, yes. Please continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I was saying that to some extent, I identified with the advantages that had been proposed with dollarization. But I have slightly a different position. Dollarization exists at different stages. To some extent, the economy is being dollarized to some extent if you look at other indicators. I mean, if you look at the bedroom economy, the currency composition, if you look at it, across pricing, others will say they are fast forwarding the transactions in the currency that is more stable and all of that. So it's with us here. In a certain sense, I think that Thompson has spoken about that currency is a measure of sovereignty. So to dollarize the extreme form, perhaps they see what people are proposing, abandon the local currency and adopt the US dollar. Or you can introduce the US dollar alongside the local currency and peg the local currency to the US. The immediate requirement may be, do we have enough gross reserves to exchange for the local currency? It doesn't have to be, because not all our reserves that are actually in liquid form and all of that. But if we decide to go that way, then we want to look at how do we operationalize it. In other countries where they dollarize completely, they decided to borrow from either the international capital market to shore up the foreign exchange in order that if they decide to exchange, there will be enough FX for every local currency that was in circulation. But Ghana with less market access, right? We can't go to the market this year, not next year, at least under the IMF supported program. Bear in mind that in the midst of Russia, Ukraine, post-COVID, and the rest of them, some African countries have actually gone to the international capital market, while Ghana is still weeping. I'm talking about Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Kenya.
Yeah.
The first quarter of this year, they've gone to the market.
Well, they didn't sink as low as junk status.
Sorry?
They didn't sink as low as junk status like we did.
That's what I'm saying. That while Ghana was blaming COVID in Russia, Ukraine, it was a clear case of running away from responsibility and shifting the blame, because we don't want to behave like adults. We don't want to be responsible for our actions and inactions, from which we will actually learn and determine never to repeat them. So back to business. So to some people, dollarizing is partly a case of capitulation. We are a sovereign nation. But of course, we have already been on that path. On 1st July 2022, Republic Day, the only meaningful thing Ghana did on a Republic Day 2022 was to surrender sovereignty to the IMF. So we are already in that path. So what will be the result from there? But could you dollarizing is not a substitute for fiscal discipline, which has eluded us over the years. Probably, like Mr. Thompson is saying, the immediate effect will be that it imposes a certain binding constraint on the government from having access to more and cheap money as they have done from the central bank. But I do not think that would, because the point is that once you dollarize, your growth may not be at optimal level because you lose the privilege of using interest rates to engineer growth. In fact, other countries that have dollarized, like Panama and the rest of them, over a period, growth have been below potential. And given Ghana's population growth, when you correct growth for population growth, chances are that per capita become maybe lower, and ultimately it may not inure to the benefit of the citizens. If you compare what we are going through right now to the first quarter of 2023, it will not seem like a worst case scenario is coming home. No. We've seen this over the years. So we've also seen relative stability within the period as well. Part of what we see happening right now is also the fact that there is considerable uncertainty with the approval of Ghana's second review, which is tied to the release of the third tranche under the IMF supported program, because we needed to procure memorandum of understanding from our external bilateral creditors through the fiscal committee co-chaired by China and France. So that delay, the market is reading a deeper meaning into that. Apart from it, if you look at the way the IMF program is designed, it's easier for speculators to take entrenched positions because this is billions of wealth of an economy. The total inflows in terms of balance of payment needs as captured in the IMF program is woefully inadequate. The IMF knows that. And that is why the IMF position has been allowed the exchange rate to adjust to reflect the pressure. In other words, their incentive is not for the central bank to actually fight off the depreciation by burning it through their reserves. Remember, the reserve the central bank is sitting on is also partly as a result of non-payment of coupons and principal repayment of our external debt, which has also helped show up our business. What Ghana should have done, Kojo, and the managing director of the IMF said it, and at the beginning of the program, our president echoed that, right? That the IMF program alone is not sufficient to take Ghana out of this situation. The president said the same thing. But the question is, what is it that the country is doing to complement the measures that are in the IMF supported program? In fact, from the second half of last year, with the exception of the IMF program and measures that are in the program, there is no communication to the market that the Ghana government is actually taking further and drastic measures to complement the measures that are in the IMF supported program. In fact, from the beginning of this year, virtually every week, what we hear are more negative news about leadership deficiency than positive news. The reality is that negative news exert greater volatility on the exchange rate compared to positive news of the same magnitude. So when it happens that way, it undermines confidence in the economy. And then you will see that when it happens that, and then again, what you see is also the fact that it's an election year. Without the crisis that we have gone through, they are conjectural, right? It's an election year. In almost all the major competitive election years that we've had, portfolio flows, foreign direct investments into the country tend to slow down because investors will want to adopt the attitude of wait and see. And therefore, in terms of the much needed portfolio flows, FDI flows, that should complement the limited assets that we have here. You are not seeing that happening. So when you put all the landscape and all of that together, you realize that the city is exposed. And when speculators see that, they will take an entrenched position. Part of that is what is playing out here. Right. So if you ask anyone what will be the value of the city 1 month from now, they are likely to tell you that it's going to depreciate because the expectation is on the down, it's on the downward trend. That is what you see. Right. Now, our lead service that we have paid to agriculture is coming home. Ghana's cocoa production has gone down significantly.
Yes.
In fact, the syndicated cocoa loan, how much we were getting in the time past, which we used to slow up our reserves and also go to the international capital market, as Raymond alluded to earlier, take some billions of dollars, and then we do pinky party over it. All of that syndicated cocoa loan has gone down significantly. Look, the Ghana cocoa sector is seriously at risk. Yeah. Price has gone up. We are not making gains because this is the reality. We are not working hard. We are not on the ground. We are doing politics with this economy. Yeah. The exchange will keep telling us the reality on the ground, but we borrow to manage it. And then we do politics at some point, we even blame it on dwarfs, high-rise buildings, and all of that. So, check the cocoa sector. The major inflows that have helped us over the years to ensure relative stability, they are no more there, predictably. So when it happens that way, and we are not doing anything in terms of import substitution, planting for food, where is the food? Where are the jobs? In the first phase, we have moved to the second phase. Has there been any evaluation, the efficiency, and all of that? 1D, 1F, where are the dams? Are there water in them? Will they be utilized? And all of that. Meanwhile, so much has been spent.
Yeah.
One has to feel sorry for this country. I'm sure if this economy were to have the nerve to speak, it will speak stronger than what the Cedi is telling us.
Well, thank God it has people like you to speak for it, Prof. For me, 2 questions remain. And I'll start with Uncle Ken, if you don't mind. Businesses are suffering. I gave the example of the woman who imports, provisions, fruit juice and canned foods, spends about $10,000 to stock her shop, sells everything in there in a month, makes herself some 13,000 Ghana cedis, maybe with profit on top, so 13,500 Ghana cedis in the month of April. Then in the month of May, she wants to go back and buy the same $10,000 worth of goods, but now she needs 14,500 Ghana cedis. So she's made profit, but she's also made a loss. How do these people protect themselves from what this Cedi is doing? What can businesses do? Do we still have Ken Thompson?
I'm here.
Yeah.
I lost you briefly. Okay.
I wonder if should I repeat the question?
So what businesses can do? If you're a business, you're in a tight spot. And my advice is that, and this is a very serious advice, find the nearest church and go on your knees. And nobody should tell me that prayer is not a strategy, because the situation in which you are in is you've got to pray about it. Find the nearest church. Because you also can't close shop. Because all the things that we need to do to prevent depreciation, to slow it down, and the inflation that kills your business, we've talked about them. We've talked about grit, feed yourself, we feed ourselves. We've talked about tourism as a service industry. We've talked about corruption. We've talked about government spending too much. We spend on projects and the cash flows do not exist to pay for the loans that we took for this project. We talk about 1D, 1F. We talk about Plant for Food and Jobs. Where are the cash flows? We talk about the Bank of Ghana giving the government a wolf money. We've talked about these things. So what do we need to say again? All we need to do is keep talking and pray. What else can we do? I mean, it's just you're looking into a well and you can't see the bottom. What you can be said? Find a church, go on your knees and pray, because that's your only strategy. The way we're going, that's the only strategy. I don't have anything else to say, except to keep hammering on about things that we need to do to get us right. Yeah. And we shouldn't stop talking, because when you stop talking, when you start getting tired of saying something, that's when people begin to listen. You're in a no-hope situation. An absolute no-hope situation. You bring in money to a country, it's $100,000. Within 2 years, it's $50,000. I mean, the Cedi, beginning of January 2022, was around 6 cedis to a dollar. The government was giving a wolf money. Now we're heading towards 15, 16. What else needs to be said? But we've got to keep talking. We're going to continue talking. We won't stop talking until we start to do the right thing, because you're destroying value. Yeah. That's my take. I mean, I don't have any other. I mean, the thing that I say, well, keep your money in dollars. Of course, you keep it in dollars, you're still losing. You still have to generate a profit. Well, are you going to sit at home and not do anything? Put your money in government debt. Well, government has shown that it's capable of saying that I'll not pay you back. So what do you do? I mean, what do you do? It's just so stressful and frustrating for all of us. Yeah. It's not good enough. It's just not good enough.
Thank you, Uncle Ken. Prof. Bokpin, let me ask you the other question. So now these people want our votes. All these political parties are suggesting they are the solution. What is the proof? What is the thing I want to hear from the next potential government before I give them my vote? What should I hear them saying that they will do about this city, which will prove to me that they can actually make this better?
That's interesting. Let's look at this and let's try to see some positive in the review. Probably towards the end of June, our projection is that Ghana should be nearing the approval of the second review, from which we can get $350 million.
Okay.
Inflows from the parliament. That will give them some temporary relief. I'm saying temporary because we should be careful with those celebrate them as though we have done with this major. We got $350 million. So in this economy, this is woefully inadequate. Perhaps it may also trigger confidence and all of that. But then again, between now and December 7, how we meet the political temperature will have a lot of implications for the city, because if we don't manage it well, it may even trigger portfolio flows out of this country. And that will compound our situation and all of them. If the political temperature is raised unnecessarily, you may find investors, domestic investors, or even Ghanaians, who would want to store up foreign currency as a protective mechanism. So it's an election. It's part of our democratic process. So let's manage it well in such a way that we do not create unnecessary tension, which would impact negatively on the stability of the local currency. Then back to your question. Politicians having problems with coming out with manifestos full of promises. In 2016, if you put all the promises that the political parties make, it's just a little lower than all the promises contained in the Bible. The only difference is that with God, all his promises are yes and amen. Not with politicians. I think that we are at the point where we need to work with the media, and we need to interrogate the promises politicians make And I believe that given what has happened in the last 7 years, politicians will probably learn some lessons that how you see things in the position is not exactly the same way that they are in the power. And therefore, a certain level of moderation and humility is important. So if I put on my technical lenses, it won't take Ghana less than 15 years. It's consistency to come out of the situation.
How many years?
15 years. Let's not joke about this thing. To talk about economic transformation and inclusive productivity growth from where Ghana is right now, it will require some fiscal discipline, lean government approach, drastic measures, and the consistency of it over a certain period of time before you see development beginning to impact at the micro level in a positive way that it will reflect in the pocket of ordinary Ghanaians. What am I saying? If we assume Ghana is able to get a good leader, what would be necessary will be a certain level of patience. And which is important in laying solid foundations. And the reason that is important is that that leader should not be interested in harvesting during his lifetime. That's exactly the point of making. That leader must be willing to plant and not be worried that others will enter his labor and harvest. We need that. And if you read the economic journey, Singapore, Malaysia, Malaysia in the 90s during the Asian crisis, when other Asian countries turned to the IMF, Malaysia looked within. They had some temporary challenges, but leadership was on the table. And they rallied behind leaders. And in fact, if you look at the data, Malaysia recovered stronger than the other Asian countries that turned to the IMF. Are we willing to do that? If you tune to the radio stations and you see the line of the discussion, it doesn't look to me that this country will turn the lead anytime soon. Sharply divided along political lines, tribalism, and all of it. So, yes, unfortunately, those who choose our leaders for us, you are not one of them. I'm also not one of them. Raymond is not one of them. Those who really understand the issues and will be able to hold the politicians accountable, we are not one of them.
Yeah.
We are not one of them. So sometimes it looks as though we are wasting our time. And that's why the politicians are not so keen about listening to you and I. They are on the ground where the majority, those who decide where they are, and their understanding of the issues and the rest of them is completely at variance and the rest of them. So check from white data, from BEC, the percentage of the student population that start for BEC that are able to go to secondary school and that are able to filter to the university and the rest of them. In fact, more than 80% of your mates, they are way behind you. Way behind you. Of course, this democracy, whether you understand the issues or not, we all have the same basis.
Yeah.
There's the urgent need to save Ghana's democracy from this stuff. When I say so, I'm not proposing an alternative to it. How do we make it work? Our democracy is failing us. Look, our democracy has been hijacked. Our morals have been lost to the highest bidder. You see it manifesting in Lamsey. Politicians have entered that sector because it's money that settles everything. It's not good plan. It's not good intention. Our democracy is highly commercialized and monetized. Good ideas has no place in our democracy. No.
Prof, thank you very much.
That's very sad for Ghana.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Professor Godfred Bokpin, economist and professor of finance at University of Ghana. And of course, Ken Thompson, director of Dalex Finance, a thought leader on business and economic matters, and a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. Ray, they say businesses should just get on their knees and pray.
It's a serious situation. Sometimes, so every time we have this conversation, people will reduce it to, oh, well, after all, they will talk and nothing won't happen.
Yeah.
But what they forget is that it is costing us jobs. And we should stop pretending to ourselves that we are some special kind of people. People elsewhere are making real progress. They are moved beyond the rhetoric and showing evidence of development. But we are still relying, my friend will call it, past glory. First country south of the Sahara to gain independence, mentioned in Nkrumah. And that's why if a country, after 65 or so years, every time it's Nkrumah that we are mentioning, it tells you the entire story. Yeah. But we glorify ourselves with that. We are still, because we can, they'll say, oh, look to the positive side. But we are suffering. We are retrogressing. We are not making, even if you are progressing, it's not at the pace that we should be making it. And by the day, we are eroding the things that we held dear, even over the period that we are so much interested in. And yet, we cannot, it's almost like there's a book about how Rwanda dealt with, and Prof was talking about the Malaysian example.
Yeah. How
Rwanda dealt with exchange rate difficulties. There is another, and we kept having this conversation about how countries like in Jamaica, when they went through the domestic debt exchange, the conversation between industry and government, they sat them down and told them, listen, it is no longer business as usual. If you want us to go through this process, these are our demands. Those fundamental changes ought to be done to move us forward. When they say that at independence we're better than South Korea, and now their GDP per capita is more than 5 times our own, we should not be taking them as jokes. We are not making the progress that's required. But we can be happy with ourselves, comparing partisan politics. Oh, I did this. You mentioned this amount of money. This one will say I also spent 2 billion. We spent 150 billion. We borrowed this amount of money. And we can even glorify borrowing to the point that how much you borrowed is so important to us. Oh, we borrowed within our time because the people looked at us as a burgeoning proper society. When your colleagues on the other side are the ones giving you the money, you get the point.
Yeah.
So we should think deeply. And what I fear is elections do not afford Ghanaians the opportunity to think deeply. It becomes partisan lines all through. But this should have been a wonderful time for us to now have a conversation with the people who are seeking to rule us. That on exchange rate, for example, what is our national plan? What is this plan that President Akufo-Addo captured? And see, when people love President Akufo-Addo, it was not because of any other thing. Some of the things he said resonated with the people. The man says, I could fix a Georgesburg economy. We all identify that as a problem. I hope you get the point. So, for many people who felt that this is elevating the conversation, that was refreshing. But we've done almost 7, getting to 8 years. We are having the same sort of conversations. We're having in 65, 72, 84, basically all the same sort of conversations. Go to the difficulty people had with Liman. No, even before Liman. The difficulty people had with Buzia. It included exchange rate difficulties. And you'll be asking yourself, how can one country be having the same sort of problems over the years? There's a definition for repeating the same solution to your problems without getting results. I mean, see, we should be mindful. Perhaps this is an opportunity because now they are willing to come and listen and engage us. We went through a PC peg or something that they call it, right? We had COVID. We went through an IMF program. We said we're having a post-COVID recovery program. Today, I keep asking myself, where is that document? We, who are supposed to be part of the conversation and help people understand it better, where is that document? Have you seen a copy of that document?
Never.
Well, but that is our blueprint.
The IMF actually, when we eventually got the program, They now shared what we sent to the IMF.
Yes, but is that our document? Is that a full PC peg?
That's what we sent, saying when we talked about we are sending our own policies to the IMF. But this is the point. I will just make a point. Kojo, you may know Kwesi Brew, right? The poet, you know him.
Yes.
He has a piece known as Ancestral Faces. Now, I just would quote the last paragraph. They looked at us and said, we have not changed. They looked at us and said, we have not changed. So, from Kwame Nkrumah up until now, we're having the same conversation with the same solutions, and the same problem persists. That is the reality of the Ghanaian.
Guys, what our two guests have said to us is serious. Ken Thompson says if you are in business in Ghana, go to a church, get on your knees and pray. In other words, if you know someone who is running a business in this country, the way things are going now, that person is engaged in an irrational act.
Even planning.
Just think about what I just said. Anyone engaged in a business in this country is theoretically engaged in an irrational act, because you will work your backside off and still make a loss because your currency cannot hold. And then go and try and borrow money and see what happens. Who can borrow at 35-40% and run a business with it? Where will the profit come from? So if you are in business in this country, you are engaged in an irrational act. And Professor Bokpin says, the politician too will make more promises than God. But at least in God's case, his promises are what? Yes and amen. But a politician's promises are no and embassy.